So in the last video, we talked about getting started with Git. So we made our first Git commits. We added files and we unstaged files. We used git log, git status, all that good stuff. In this video, we're going to talk about branches. Branches are an important part of working with Git. As you saw, in the last video, we were working on the master branch, and git status tells us that, right? So it says on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So a common way to work with Git is that the master branch is the default branch, and so it ends up being the sort of the place that all working code gets merged into. But you kind of want a place to work on code. So usually that'll be done in separate branches, maybe a branch for a certain feature, and you do all your commits there, and then when they're ready, you have a bunch of people review it, and then that gets merged back into master. So that's what this video is going to be about. So let's get started by just making a branch. So one way to make a Git branch is to type git branch and then a branch name. So we'll call this new feature. And now if we run git branch, that'll list all of our branches, and we'll see we have the master branch and we have new feature branch, but we're still on master, and you can tell because it's green and it has this little star next to it. So how you actually switch that branch is you run git checkout and then the branch name. And now if we run git branch, we'll see that the star has moved and new feature is now green. And if we run git status, we'll see that it says we're on branch, new feature, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So let's start adding some commits. So let's add another file. We'll call it a feature file. This is a file that pretends to add a new feature. And you can probably imagine how this is working, right? So if this was real code, you could imagine this as like a new like a .c and .h file if you were working in C, or like a new .py that is maybe a new class that sort of implements this new feature, that's sort of separated from your other code. So we'll just pretend that file does that, and let's run git status first just to show what the state is. And so now we can add the feature file, and I'm going to commit, and I'm going to say add new feature X. And so we have our new feature on a branch, and it's in this new file, and if we run git log, we'll see we have a new commit, and it's on top of all the other commits because this is where we branched off from, right? We branched off from master, so all our commits are going to go on top of master. And this is an important part to talk about what head is. So head basically points to your current branch that you're working on. That's not always true, and when it can point to a specific commit, and when it does, that's usually called a detached head state, which is kind of confusing for new beginners, but it's really not that crazy when you understand a little better. But we're not going to talk about that quite yet. The important thing that I want to show is that master is still down here. Master hasn't changed at all, but we have this new code that's separate from master on its own branch that we can sort of look at independently. And at this point, I also want to mention the git show command. If you ever want to know what a new commit does, or what any commit does, you can copy this hash and you can run git show against the hash, and that shows you the commit info, so like the author and the commit message, and then it shows you a diff. So basically all this is saying is we made a new file, and the file adds this new line. It doesn't remove any lines. This is sort of a common format. If you've worked with like diffs, this is a similar, it looks very similar to diffs. If you had remove files, you would see like a minus and then the line that got removed. And it's important to notice here that Git works on files as if, or works with changes as if they're line by line. So let's say we have, we wanted to end an exclamation point to the end of this, right? And we'll create a new file and we'll add a commit saying missing exclamation. And now if we git show new feature, this is kind of a little more interesting, right? So this is the commit that we just added, the missing exclamation. And it says we deleted a line and added a line. And the reason it says that is because we changed a line. And so this is sort of what I'm getting at of Git works on lines works on files line by line. So it doesn't show changes as a single character, it shows them as line by line changes. Which can be a little confusing, but kind of makes sense, right? Because code is generally organized into separate lines. Each line kind of means its own thing. Of course, there are exceptions, but that's kind of how that works. Like your C printf is sort of a self-contained single line thing usually. And if you're changing that, you're changing the meaning of the whole line and you're not changing just a single character. So let's say we want to merge this back into the master branch. First, you might first we would check out master, right? Because that's our branch that we want to merge onto. And then before I merge anything, and before you merge anything, you should probably run a git diff on the branch that you're going to merge. And this will just show what the difference is between that branch and the branch that you're merging onto. And so this is kind of backwards, and actually this is saying that the master branch is just the new feature branch minus this line and minus this file, which is kind of confusing. So it might make more sense to check out the new feature branch and diff it against master, and that sort of shows the more obvious way of looking at this. But let's check master back out. And if we git log again, we'll see our head points to master, and we don't see our old commit, or we don't see our new feature branch commits. And don't worry about that. Really, git log by default will only show you commits previous in the line to your head. So it won't show you all your commits, it'll only show you everything that leads up to your head. And so because we're on master right now, the new commits are above master, and so we can't see them when we check out master. But don't freak out, they're still there, I promise. And so if we wanted to merge that code, what we would do is we would write git merge and then our branch. And this says, this is the hashes that it's updating. It says it's fast forwarding. This is kind of interesting because there's sort of two ways of merging. There's a fast forward and there's a merge commit. So a merge commit is when your two branches have diverged and you need a new commit to bring them back together. In this case, we fast forwarded because master and the new feature branch hadn't diverged. New feature was just master and everything newer. So if master had another commit that wasn't part of new feature, then we would have needed a merge commit to bring them back together. If you don't quite understand that right now, don't worry about it. I'm going to cover that more in a future video with some pretty good examples, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along. So that's actually all there is to a merge. And if we run git log, we'll see this was our old master, and we fast forwarded above this commit, and we fast forwarded onto this commit, and now we see our head points to master, and new feature, our head points to master, and master and new feature are point to this commit. And so that's sort of all I'm going to talk about in this video, just the beginning of Git merging. In the next video, we're going to talk about merging in a more complicated way. We're going to talk about merge conflicts and sort of how you resolve those and how you can reason about those. But for now, I would recommend that you play with this, maybe create a couple more branches, try branch them off from different places, play with just merging them, adding commits, all of those sorts of things, and then come join me in the next video where we'll talk about merge conflicts and how you can resolve those.